Story number 1, Sump Pump. I woke at 4 in the morning to the sound of rain hitting the roof like gravel being thrown. My phone was buzzing on the nightstand. A flood warning for the county. I lay there for a moment listening, and that's when I heard it. A steady dripping sound coming from somewhere below. Not the rain on the gutters. Something inside the house. I got up and went to the basement stairs. The door was closed. I opened it, and the smell hit me right away. That wet concrete smell mixed with something else. Something like rust. The light from the hallway didn't reach far down. I didn't go all the way down. I just stood there listening to the drip, 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 and told myself it was probably nothing. Old houses leak. The sump pump probably just needed to do its job. I'd call my landlord in the morning. I went back to bed but didn't sleep. I lay there thinking about water damage, insurance claims, and whether I'd remembered to move my boxes of old files away from the corner where water always pooled in heavy rain. Around 6, I got up and made coffee. The knock came at 7:45. I was still in my pajamas. I looked through the peephole and saw a man in his 50s, maybe wearing a khaki work vest over a gray t-shirt. He had a clipboard. I didn't recognize him, but I also didn't think much of it. My landlord managed 3 properties in the area. She was always arranging something. I opened the door. "Morning," he said. His voice was quiet, almost apologetic. "Your landlord called me out for the sump pump." "Sounds like you got water coming in." I nodded, still half asleep. "Yeah, I heard dripping." I was going to call her actually. She called me last night. Said to get here early before it gets worse. He shifted his weight, glancing past me into the hallway. "I'm going to need to check the pump first, but I should probably look around upstairs too. Water finds its way, you know. Might be coming in somewhere else." It made sense. I stepped back and let him in. He wiped his feet on the mat. I noticed his work vest didn't have a company name on it. No logo, no embroidered letters. Just a plain khaki vest with pockets. His truck was parked at the curb, also unmarked. I thought about mentioning it to him, asking what company he worked for, but it seemed rude. Maybe he was independent. Maybe my landlord had hired a contractor who didn't have a full setup yet. "I work from home most days," he said, still standing in the hallway, looking around. "You here during the day usually?" Yeah. I'm a graphic designer. I work from my office upstairs, every day." "You don't go out much?" I felt something shift in my chest. Not quite fear, just a small awareness that the question was too specific. I told myself he was making conversation. Contractors ask things. They need to know if anyone's home, if they can work without bothering people. "Most days," I said. He nodded and moved toward the basement door. The smell came up stronger when he opened it. He stood at the top of the stairs, looking down into the darkness. "Let me just grab my light," he said, and he went back to the front door. I watched him walk to his truck and lean in. When he came back, he had a flashlight and what looked like a tool bag. He started down the stairs without saying anything else. I stood in the kitchen, listening to him move around below. The wet concrete smell was stronger now. I made myself another cup of coffee and tried not to think about anything. The rain had stopped. The sun was starting to come through the kitchen window. He was upstairs faster than I expected. "Pump's running fine," he said, appearing in the kitchen doorway. "But I want to check the rooms up here. Water could be coming in through the walls, the windows. I need to see everything, okay?" I said. "But I don't think there's any water damage up here. I would have noticed." Just to be safe. He started walking toward the hallway. I followed him. He went to the living room first, looking at the walls near the windows, running his hand along the baseboards. Then he moved toward the stairs that led up to the second floor. "Bedrooms up here?" he asked. "Two of them." He climbed the stairs and I stayed a few steps behind. He went into the guest room first, looked around, opened the closet. Then he moved to my bedroom door. He reached for the handle. Something in me said no. "That's my bedroom," I said. "I don't think the water would be coming in there." He paused. His hand was still on the doorknob. He didn't look at me, just stood there for a moment, and then he turned it. The door opened a few inches. "Just need to check," he said. "I don't think that's necessary." He closed the door. He turned to face me. His expression hadn't changed. He was still calm, still polite, but something was different now. The air felt thinner. "How long have you lived here?" he asked. "A few years." "Look, I'm going to call my landlord. I want to verify that she sent you." I said it calmly, like it was a normal thing to do. He didn't move. He was still standing in the hallway, blocking the stairs. "Sure," he said. "That's fine." I pulled out my phone. My hands were steady. I called my landlord. She answered on the third ring, still in her car, heading to work. "Did you send a contractor to my house?" I asked. There was a pause. "No," she said. "Why? Is something wrong?" My throat closed. I looked at the man. He was watching me. His expression still neutral, but his body had changed somehow. He was more present, more alert. "There's a man here," I said. "He said you sent him for the sump pump." "I didn't send anyone," my landlord said. "What does he look like?" I kept my eyes on him. "I'm going to need you to leave," I said. "Right now." He didn't argue. He just nodded slowly and walked past me toward the stairs. I followed him, keeping distance, keeping my phone up like I was recording him. Maybe I was, I don't remember. He went down the stairs, grabbed his tool bag, and walked out the front door. I locked it behind him. I watched through the window as he walked to his truck. He got in. He started the engine. And then he just sat there for a moment, looking at my house. Then he drove away. I called my landlord back and told her everything. She said she'd call the police, but she also said something else. She said to check the basement, to check if the outside door was locked. I went down the stairs. The smell was still there. I walked to the back of the basement, where the outside entrance is, the bulkhead doors that open to the yard. The deadbolt was unlocked from the inside. I locked it, and I locked the front door, and I sat in my kitchen with my two cats, who were acting completely normal, and I waited for the police to arrive. They came. They looked around. They said there was nothing they could do without evidence of a crime. He hadn't taken anything. He hadn't forced his way in. But he'd been inside my house, and he'd wanted to know when I was home. I still live here. I still work from my office upstairs, but now I lock my bedroom door when I'm in the house. And sometimes, late at night, I hear a car slow down as it passes, and I hold my breath until it keeps going. Story number 2, Flash Flood. I was supposed to be in Vincennes by 8 o'clock in the evening. I had 3 more pharmacy calls to make before dark, but the last one ran long. The pharmacist kept asking questions about our new formulation, and I wasn't going to rush her. That's how you lose accounts. By the time I left, the sky had turned the color of old concrete. I was driving through farmland I'd never seen before, county roads that all looked the same. Flat, corn on both sides. The GPS said I was only 30 minutes from the highway, so I didn't think much about it. Then the rain started. Not gradually. It came down like someone had turned a faucet on full. My wipers couldn't keep up. I slowed to maybe 30, 5 miles an hour, leaning forward, trying to see the road. The drumming on my roof was so loud I could barely hear my engine. Everything outside the windshield was gray and moving. I remember thinking I should pull over. But the road was narrow, and I didn't want to stop on the shoulder where someone might not see me. So I kept going slower, hands tight on the wheel. That's when I noticed the water. It wasn't deep yet, maybe an inch or two across the asphalt, but it was moving. The road dipped here, and the water was pooling, flowing from the fields on both sides. I'd driven through standing water before. It wasn't ideal, but my car could handle it. I just needed to be careful. I was thinking about that, about keeping my speed steady, when I saw the headlights behind me. A pickup truck. It came up fast, and its high beams cut through the rain and the darkness. I could see them clearly in my mirrors, bright and sharp. The truck was maybe 50 feet back, moving closer. I assumed he was warning me. That's what I told myself. The water ahead. He knew this road. He was flashing his lights to tell me to slow down, or maybe to turn around. That made sense. That seemed reasonable. I lifted my foot off the accelerator and let my speed drop to 25. The truck didn't back off, it got closer. The high beams flashed again and again. Not a quick flash, a pattern. On off, aggressive. Impatient. I thought maybe I was going too slow, maybe he wanted to pass. But there was nowhere to pass on this road, not with the rain like this. I eased to the right, giving him room, but he didn't go around me. He just stayed there, lights blazing, flashing. My heart had started to beat a little faster. I told myself it was nothing. Road rage. Some local annoyed that I was creeping along. I could pull over and let him pass. That would be fine. But something in my chest didn't like it. Something was telling me not to stop. The water was getting deeper. I could feel it under my tires now. Resistance, a slight drag. The truck was still behind me, still flashing. The rain was still deafening. I couldn't think clearly. I was trying to watch the road and the mirrors at the same time, and my hands were sweating on the wheel. Then the truck swerved. It moved to my left, and for a second I thought it was going to pass, but it didn't. It accelerated and pulled alongside me, and then it cut hard to the right, directly into my lane. There was no time to think. I jerked the wheel right, and my car left the asphalt. The gravel drive came up fast. I saw the barn in the headlights, a dark shape in the rain, and I was skidding toward it, my tires throwing stones, water splashing up. I hit the brakes and my car fishtailed, and I managed to straighten it out, maybe 30 feet from the barn's wall. The truck followed me off the road. It pulled in front of me, blocking the way back out, its headlights pointing at my windshield now, so bright I couldn't see anything else. I threw my car into reverse. The barn was behind me, the truck in front, and I was trapped in this little pocket of gravel and standing water. I was reversing, backing away from the truck's lights, when the passenger door opened. A man stepped out. He was big, solid, wearing a dark jacket, and he was holding something. Even through the rain and the darkness, I could see it. A crowbar, long, heavy. He walked toward my car with it hanging at his side, and he was moving like he had all the time in the world. I didn't think. I just reacted. I slammed the gear into reverse and hit the accelerator hard. My car lurched backward, and I heard the impact before I felt it. Metal on metal. The crunch of the truck's front bumper. The man with the crowbar jumped back, shouting something I couldn't hear over the rain. I spun the wheel and shifted into drive. The truck was damaged, but it was still in my way. I aimed for the gap between it and the barn's corner, and I accelerated. My car scraped the barn's wall, paint tearing, but I was through. I was back on the gravel drive, and I was pointing toward the road. The truck tried to follow, but it was slower now, damaged. I didn't look back. I hit the asphalt and pushed the accelerator down. The water was still there, still flowing across the road, but I didn't care. I drove through it fast, too fast. My car hydroplaned, the back end sliding, and for a moment I thought I was going to flip, but I didn't. The tires caught. I was accelerating up the other side of the dip, toward higher ground, and the truck wasn't following anymore. I could see its lights in my mirror, stationary. Back at the barn, I drove for 7 miles without stopping. I was shaking. My hands were white on the wheel, and I was breathing in short, sharp gasps. The rain was still coming down, but I could see the road now. I could see the lights of a gas station ahead. I pulled in and sat in my car for maybe 5 minutes before I could move. Then I went inside and called the police. The officers arrived 40 minutes later. They took my statement, and they didn't seem surprised. One of them, a sergeant with a weathered face, told me they'd been investigating that barn for months. Stolen vehicles. They'd strip them for parts, sell the components. It was a known operation, but they hadn't caught anyone yet. Then he told me something else. They'd found a phone inside the barn, a burner phone, and on that phone there were photographs, dozens of them, license plates, car models, owner's information pulled from registration databases. And one of those photographs was mine, my plate, my car, my name. The sergeant said they'd been tracking me since I'd passed through the county that morning. They'd been waiting for me to come back through at dusk, when the roads were empty and the light was bad. The rain was just luck. Good luck for them. It made everything easier. I asked him if they'd caught the men from the truck. He said no. They'd found the truck abandoned 3 miles away, but the men were gone. They'd probably ditched it and had a ride waiting. It happened that way sometimes. I don't drive through southern Indiana anymore. I rerouted my sales territory. And I still think about that barn, about the man with the crowbar, about the fact that they had my information before the rain even started. They'd planned it. They'd chosen me. I don't know why they didn't try again. Maybe they moved on. Maybe they're still there, waiting for someone else to drive through on a night like that. I'll never know. And that's what keeps me awake. Story number 3, Overflow Drain. I noticed the water around 9:30 in the evening. It was seeping under the bathroom door in a thin, dark line, spreading across the hardwood floor in my bedroom. The rain outside was heavy, the kind that hammers against windows and makes you aware of how thin apartment walls really are. I stood there for a moment just watching it, thinking about pipes and old buildings and how these things happen. My name is Sarah. I'm 29, and I teach 3rd grade at Lincoln Elementary. I'd moved into this apartment on the 3rd floor of the Riverside complex about 4 months ago. It's an older building, the kind with original hardwood and high ceilings, but also the kind where you can hear your neighbor's shower running and smell their cooking. I'd learned to live with that. The rent was reasonable. The neighborhood was quiet, and I liked being able to walk to the coffee shop on the corner. I grabbed some towels and started soaking up the water, then called the building superintendent. His name was Derek. He answered on the 3rd ring and said he'd be up in 15 minutes. I thanked him and hung up, then went back to the bathroom to assess the damage. The ceiling had a dark stain spreading across it, maybe the size of a dinner plate, and the smell was already getting worse. Not just wet drywall, but something underneath it. Mildew. Rust. That old building smell that makes you think about what's been hidden in the walls for decades. I left my apartment door unlocked so he wouldn't have to knock. I was in the bathroom when I heard him come in. He didn't announce himself. He just opened the door and walked through my living room like he owned the place. I heard his footsteps, heavy and deliberate, moving toward the bathroom where I was standing. "Water's coming from above," I said, pointing at the ceiling. "I think it might be the unit upstairs." Derek was in his 50s, broad, shouldered, with the kind of face that didn't move much when he talked. He stepped into the bathroom and stood very close to me while he looked up at the stain. The smell got stronger. He was wearing cologne, something cheap and sharp, and underneath that was sweat and something else I couldn't identify. "Yeah," he said. "Probably a faucet left running or a pipe burst. I'll check upstairs." He didn't move right away. He just stood there, studying the ceiling, and I became aware of how small the bathroom was, how his presence took up space. "You been here long?" 4 months, I said. "Quiet tenant," he said. It wasn't a question. "I notice things. You leave early most mornings. Work somewhere." "I teach," I said. "Elementary school?" He nodded slowly, then finally turned and walked out. I followed him, but he was already moving through my apartment, checking the kitchen, then the hallway, then pausing at my bedroom doorframe. He reached out and ran his hand along the wood, feeling the grain, while he talked about how water damage spreads and how he'd need to come back tomorrow to check the progress. His hand lingered on the frame longer than it needed to. "What time do you usually get home?" he asked, still touching the wood. "From the school?" Something shifted in my chest, a small cold shift. I didn't answer right away. I was trying to rationalize it. He was the superintendent. He needed to know when to access the apartment. That was normal. That was fine. "Around 4, I said. "But I have lesson planning some days." He finally dropped his hand and looked at me. His eyes were pale blue and very still. "I'll try to come by when you're home," he said. "Safer that way." I nodded, but I was already thinking about my phone. I pulled it out and texted my friend Maya. "Super is here checking water damage. Address is 2345 Riverside, apartment 307. Then I called her. She answered on the second ring. "Hey, what's up?" she said. "I'm here with the building superintendent," I said loudly, making sure Derek could hear. "There's water damage from the unit above. He's going to need to come back tomorrow." Derek was moving toward the front door now. He seemed to understand. He paused with his hand on the knob and turned back to me. "I'll need to check again," he said. "Tomorrow afternoon, probably." "What time works for you?" "I'll text you," I said. "Thank you for coming up so quickly." He left. I locked the door behind him and stayed on the phone with Maya while I checked every window, every lock. The rain was still coming down hard outside. I could hear it against the glass. "What happened?" Maya asked. "You sound weird." "Nothing," I said. "I'm just tired. There's water damage. It's fine." But it wasn't fine. Something about the way he'd touched my doorframe, the way he'd asked about my schedule, the way he'd walked into my apartment without knocking. I told Maya I'd call her back, and I looked up the main office number on my lease. It was almost 10 o'clock, but the answering service picked up. I asked them about the water damage, about the unit above mine. "Let me check," the woman said. There was a pause. "The unit directly above you, 307, has been vacant for 3 weeks. No work orders filed for that unit." I didn't say anything. "Is there a problem?" the woman asked. "No," I said. "Thank you." I hung up and went back to the bathroom. The water had stopped spreading. In fact, looking at it now, I wasn't sure how much water there actually was. The towels I'd used were barely damp. The dark stain on the ceiling wasn't growing. It was just sitting there, the same size, the same color, like it had been painted on. I wedged a chair under my bedroom doorknob. Then I went to the living room and sat on my couch with my phone in my hand, watching the rain continue outside, listening to the building settle and creak around me. The mildew smell was still there, faint but present, like something had been disturbed and was now slowly settling back into the walls. I didn't sleep. I sat there until dawn, waiting for the rain to stop, waiting for something to make sense. By morning, the water under the bathroom door had completely disappeared. There was no trace of it on the hardwood. The ceiling stain was still there, but smaller somehow. Or maybe I was just tired and seeing things differently in the daylight. I called in sick to school. I stayed home, and I kept thinking about Derek's hand on my doorframe, the way he'd asked about my schedule, the way he'd known which apartment was mine, and that I left early in the mornings. The water that had drawn him to my door had vanished without explanation. And I couldn't stop wondering if it had ever been real at all, or if it had been something else entirely, something designed to get him in